Hello there, and welcome to my YouTube channel dedicated to AOE II content. As some of you may know, I have been hosting a Nomad start-only tournament recently, with a mix of random civ starting and then a civ pick if it goes to a game 3 in the best of 3. There should be lots of clips and videos from previous matches on my channel, and we're approaching the final stages with semifinals and finals of the higher elo bracket, capping at 1500 elo, so I'm looking forward to concluding that one. But as I have been casting a lot of Nomad recently on my Twitch channel, as this will be linked in the description below, I wanted to make my own tier list as to the as far as the civilizations for Nomad go and how I like to play them. And yeah, I might not have played all of the civs here for Nomad, so it's going to be a very subjective opinion, obviously, but I'm going to do my best to give any reasons as to why I think the civilizations belong where they do. So this will be in an alphabetical order, I'd say. So let's begin with the Aztecs here. Now, Aztecs, not the best civ to challenge water. It's not your go-to water civ, but as far as Nomad goes, I really appreciate the eco bonuses for civilizations, and Aztecs with the carrying more resources per trip for the villagers is going to play in here, especially if you're in a team game for Nomad and you say you random Aztecs, you probably wouldn't pick them, but if you random them, you get a spot where you're essentially getting a free boom. I give Aztecs quite a good run for the money there. They have a great mobility and raiding potential in the Eagle Warriors. They have great infantry and monks, so they certainly have lots of things to offer on land, even if they may not contest water to the as well as other civs. So Aztecs is going to be an A tier for me, actually. So for the next one, we have Berbers. We're doing alphabetical order here. Now Berbers, no actual eco bonus. You could say that Berbers get a little advantage on Nomad with their faster moving villagers though, and also to mention that their fishing ships or ships in general move faster on water. So you actually have a kind of a decent naval bonus there, for especially if you want to go for your galleys and micro them away, hit and run. You could simply outpace other ships, so that's a good one there, but lacking a direct eco bonus aside from fish maybe collecting or moving a little bit faster to and from the dock. I don't give Berbers the top tier for Nomad. They have cheaper cavalry in the Castle Age and Imperial Age though, which plays in as well for the land play for Berbers, but I'd still just give them the B tier here actually. Decent civ, but not top tier. Then there are Britons. They actually don't. They get cheaper town centers, so the boom from Castle Age onwards is great. But that doesn't apply for your first Dark Age TC, which would be awesome for Nomad to save that 133 wood early. That's essentially 2 free fishing ships for you. Now Britons are very streamlined towards the archers play, and Nomad with, let's say you start in one corner each of the map for a Nomad. That's not ideal for Britons going archers, and that's what they have going for them. For Britons, yeah, I really don't see them. Let's not give them bottom tier because of the fact that their TCs and the boom potential is good from the Castle Age onwards. But for me, it's a D tier for Nomad actually. Now, as for the Bulgarians, I haven't played them a lot for Nomad, but they have a good way of taking map control with their creposts and castles, and the unique unit being the mounted unit, the Conic, with some mobility, and not to mention that the TCs cost only 50 stone for Bulgarians. Great boom potential. You could also argue that an early barracks with the instant men-at-arms and later on longswords and upgrade could come in handy, and also with their unique technology stirrups for cavalry attacking faster, you absolutely have a viable knights into cavaliers play as well. I'd say for the boom potential and for the map control potential of creposts and castles, Bulgarians are pretty solid, but I don't see them contesting water all that well. So let's make that a B tier as well. Pretty solid sim, but not way up there. No direct eco bonus for them. Now for the Burmese. Not too sure about them. I mean, we know the Iron Bike can be strong on closed-off maps, but you need to get to them. But so the unique unit for Burmese, a cavalry archer with very high damage output, but lacking in armor in the blacksmith department, only getting the feudal age armor, I believe, for archers and mounted archer units. It's still a great unit if you can get to it though, and Nomad isn't exactly in short supply on stone, so let's go with Burmese for B tier as well here. Now for the Byzantines. We don't know where to place them, but we'd have to consider that the Byzantines get an attack bonus for their fire ships. Their fire ships attack faster. Mobility is a bit of a setback for Byzantines because they don't get what is it? Bloodlines for their cavalry. Let me just double check. Maybe mixing things up here. They get husbandry but no bloodlines, so their mounted units are a bit weaker. But as compensation, they get cheaper camels. So you'll have a nice counter to enemy cavalry there, and you'd also have cheaper skirmishers and pikemen to counter basically any land aggression. Byzantines classified as defensive civ. Their castles, their buildings in general have more hit points, so that could be useful. And for the naval bonus as well, pretty solid, but again lacking an actual eco bonus to start the game. That's a setback for me, so that's going to be a B tier for the Byzantines. Next up is the Celts, and yeah, I wouldn't underestimate Celts for Nomad. Their lumberjacks work faster, so that's going to be useful when you want to get to that fishing eco getting started, which is crucial for Nomad. You want to dock right away and get your fish income going, so having a wood bonus is actually going to benefit your production in that sense. You could commit less to wood early on if you're dependent on food on land to keep your TC producing, and still have the wood income needed to sustain your fish and chips and to build houses on top of it. Celt, not the best cavalry, so the mobility on land is kind of limited. But that wood bonus would also apply to a ship production like fish and chips and naval army in general. So I'd actually put Celts pretty far up here. There's nothing to stop Celts from going cavalry in cast edge either. They have decent knights. So let's get Celts the A tier here because of that wood bonus that applies throughout the whole game. Then we have Chinese. Now after a patch a good few months back, the Chinese and Mayans for that matter, the Chinese don't start with 6 villagers instantly on Nomad. You need to build a TC first, but then you'll get your 3 villagers for free. Now, Chinese with a very open tech tree could go archers, could go mounted units, could challenge water, and their technologies get cheaper as you advance through the ages as well. Very versatile too. And considering that once your TC is up, you get another 3 villagers instantly. If you have a food source, let's say you have a boar, you have sheep, you have hunt close to your TC, you're actually able to negate the fact that Chinese start with 0 food in the bank. So I'd say for that reason, Chinese is A tier on Nomad. It's not S tier simply because they don't have an actual concrete eco bonus to begin the game, and they don't spawn 6 villagers instantly anymore like they used to. If that were the case, Chinese would definitely be up there in the S tier for their 6 total starting villagers. Now for Cumans, you'd argue that Cumans getting their second feudal age TC is a good thing for Nomad starts. But first of all, you need to get there. You need to drop your first TC in Dark Age. You need to drop your dock as well, which is 150 wood. And then you need to commit a lot to wood to keep fish and ships and that sort of productions going. That means that once you reach the feudal age, either you invest more into naval fighting and fish control, or you invest into a second TC on land. And for Nomad, that water control is so important that I'd say that having the option of a second TC in feudal age is almost a little bit of a setback for Cumans. Now, one thing they have going for them later on is that they have cavalry that moves faster throughout the ages. When you get to the Imperial Age, you actually have the fastest paladins in the game. And the Kipchak, a nice mobile, unique unit as well. But because they lack a concrete Dark Age economy bonus, and that the second TC isn't nearly as viable as on many other maps. I'm actually going to put the humans in D tier here. Now for the Ethiopians. They don't have a direct Dark Age eco bonus either, but they do have the fast firing archers, which could come in handy if you spawn close to your enemy or start your TC close to the enemy. But and again, if you have a large distance, say you put your TCs at either side of the map, archers is not nearly as viable. Ethiopians being an archer civ, of course, they do get bracer and the appropriate upgrade for naval army, so they probably should be reckoned with for water control. There's also the fact that once you reach a feudal age or the next age, you get 100 food and 100 gold for free. Could come in very handy for progressing through the ages and getting a quicker castle age. I'd say for that reason, Ethiopians, although they are very streamlined towards archers play, they could fit in the C tier here. Absolutely not top notch, but still a decent civ for Nomad. Next up is the Franks. Now, Franks, one of my absolute favorite civs. I don't necessarily pick them for Nomad, but they kind of have a Dark Age eco bonus, because if you can find some berries close to your TC location, Franks foragers, they collect berries 25% faster. So that's a Dark Age eco bonus a little bit there. Also, once we get to the feudal age, you get horse collar, the farm upgrade instantly. Same with the castle age, the heavy flow, giving Franks a fantastic boom potential. Franks lack bracer, as far as I know, so that makes them less viable on water for the long run. But for the early game, you'd still be able to contest water as Franks, so I don't think it applies as much here. The mobility with the instant 20% more HP for your stable line units upon hitting the feudal age is great as well if you want to go for some scouts play on land, which Franks would usually do on land maps. It's very good for taking early land control on Nomad. You also have the cheaper castles. The Franks castles are 25% cost 25% less, so I'd say Franks actually maybe a bit underestimated on Nomad, but I'd still give them the A tier, simply because I love playing Franks and because they have lots of things going for them for land control especially, and the boom potential, of course. Next up is the Goths. So after a recent patch, the Goths got, well, first they got instant loom, which was kind of frowned upon by the community. Many people didn't like that because it really opens up for some early flaming potential, going to take the wall in your villagers near the enemy base and shoot their boar so they can take that one. Or because you have loom instantly, you could just go straight for the enemy base and wall in enemy resources and whatnot. But that, of course, comes in handy on Nomad for the early game. Once your TC is up, you could still research Loom instantly. It will cost you the gold, but the research will basically just take you 1 second or less. So that's something that could come in handy on Nomad if you want to commit villagers to scouting and these kinds of things. You also Goths very streamlined towards the infantry play, although their knights are decent in Castle Age. They get access to Cavalier as well. And their water potential may be actually a bit underestimated, because Goths, they get more or less a full blacksmith for the ranged units. They get bracer, which is going to be useful later on, and they're missing elite cannon galleon, but that's about it in their naval army tech tree. They even get fast fire ships, so Goths absolutely able to challenge water. There's still the issue that they're only kind of, if you could even call it an eco bonus, not needing to research Loom. It's something that sets them back. They have cheaper infantry though, could be a means to take early land control on Nomad. Let's put Goths in the B tier. Alright, and next up is the Huns. Now Huns, they start with, well, they never need to build houses, which is a good thing. Saves you a bit of wood along the way. But for Nomad, starting with 100 less wood is just a disaster. Starting with 100 less wood on Nomad means you can, of course, you can afford to place your starting TC, which you have to, but you will not be left with spare wood to drop a dock and get your fish started. So for that simple reason, Huns are already F tier on Nomad. You just don't want to pick them for that missing the wood early on, which is so crucial to get your docks up and getting your fish production going. It sets you back a bit too much, although if you can get going with Huns, you have great mobility on land with both cav archers and knights into paladins. But that 100 wood in the start is just, it takes too long for that, not needing to build houses to kick in to save the wood, and I don't think it's worthwhile to go for Huns on Nomad because you won't be able to get your dock up early enough. You'll fall back in the villagers and in food production to any enemy if you're Huns on Nomad. Next up is Incas. That's a bit of a tricky one. Incas, their houses support 10 more population. 5 more population, I mean, 10 total. So and that in itself saves you a little bit of wood. You have stone buildings costing less stone as well, so Incas towers absolutely viable. Could be good for the early game Nomad if you spawn or build your TCs very close to each other and you're getting into a feudal age tower war. Incas are certainly a go-to because blacksmith upgrades, infantry upgrades also apply to your villagers. You have more attack and defense output on your Incas villagers than regular villagers with loom. So for that kind of early fighting with Incas, it's great. You'd also have that potential for Eagle Warriors later on for more map control and raids. And all in all, I think Incas are a worthwhile pick for Nomad. Let's place them in the A tier. Next up is the Indians. Now it's interesting. Indians have cheaper villagers, easier to get going on Nomad. You're not dependent upon nearly as much food to get your production going and keep it sustained. Indians don't get knights, obviously, but they have the best camels in the game, which is good. They also have fishermen that work faster, shore fishers. So once you have dropped your dock with Indians, your villagers will, if you choose to keep them near your dock to collect shorefish, they will collect that faster, which is going to again make consistent production from your town center a lot more fluent. I feel like the lack of night could be hurtful for Indians. It kind of limits your land potential. But then again, if you want to go for the scouts, they get +1 pierce armor, or stable units. The camels and the scouts get +1 pierce armor in Castle Age and Imperial Age for a +2 total, which means that their raiding potential or the ability to tank enemy archer fire is a lot higher. I don't pick Indians a lot for Nomad. Might be a bit underrated, but for me, their limited options has me put them in the C tier actually. Oh, let's make that B tier for the cheaper villagers and the good boom potential. Now for the Italians. Now this is going to be my first S tier civ, and I'm going to explain why. Italians, they are advancing to the next stage, cost 25%, 15% less, sorry. And the dock technologies cost less as well. Their fishing ships cost less. So for Italians, to get your fish eco going on Nomad, it's just so much easier because you spend less wood overall. You could, if you commit heavily onto wood early on, you could sustain fishing ships production much more easily. Easier to drop more docks with your wood income as well, and to get a lot of food eco going, rolling on water early on. That comes with the cost that you need to contest water, of course, but Italians have a full blacksmith tech tree, so they get razor water. They have they're generally a good naval civilization overall. But on land, they get decent cavalry as well, and upon reaching the Imperial Age, you have access to the Condottiero, which is a great counter, almost like a husk roll against archers, high pierce armor infantry unit, which your teammates also will have access to once you reach the Imperial Age. So Italians absolutely S tier Nomad, easy to get going with, and you have many potential good counters against enemy units. Your unique unit from the castle, the Genoese crossbowman, is a fantastic counter against enemy mounted units as well. Of course, it's not as mobile. It's a foot archer, but it still has very high damage output against any enemy cavalry unit. And following right up is another S tier Nomad civ, in my opinion. It's the Japanese. Now, Japanese fishing ships, they are very hard to kill. They have some extra armor, and they are also left with twice the hit points of any other generic civilization's naval units. Your mills, lumber camps, etc., the resource drop of points cost 50% less, so you have an easier time extending the eco on land as well by milling deer, for example, or berries, or multiple mining camps for gold and stone purposes. You save some wood along the way that frees up more wood for your fish eco to get going. And on top of that, you have access to Yasama towers with a unique tower technology from Castle Age, which could be used to take some map control along the shoreline, for example, to deny enemy fish or to deny enemy of resources. You have simply have towers fire extra arrows with that technology. Japanese infantry also attack faster, and the unique unit, the samurai, is also something that could come into play. For example, against enemy eagles, eagle warriors, it would be good. And the samurai also has bonus against any other civilization's unique unit. It's of course weak to archers, being an infantry unit, but it's something you could see into play with Japanese. It trains rather fast out of the castles as well. Japanese S tier for Nomad. Next up is the Khmer, which I'm not sure where I want to put. I love Khmer for semi-closed maps, or also for Arabia if you're able to wall off. They have fantastic siege in their heavy scorpions late game, but that's something that closed map would benefit from more, from where you can find choke points and make use of the heavy scorpions with the unique tech, having them fire an extra projectile. They have elite battle elephants as well. They have generally good, stable upgrades, husbandry, bloodlines, knights into cavalier. You can garrison villagers inside houses, which is useful for any map as well. Could save some villagers' lives early on in the early game. To Khmer, no actual direct eco bonus though, but they don't need any buildings to unlock the research of the next age or other production buildings, which could have some situational strategic uses. And there's the farms as well for Khmer that you could place anywhere, and you're not dependent upon any drop-off point. So with that in mind, I'd actually still put Khmer in the A tier for the versatility of the civ, the ease of boom, and the ease of going through the next ages, which can be crucial on Nomad. Next up is the Koreans. That's a tricky one for me. They are being more and more streamlined towards being an archer civilization. They still have their towers though, which are upgraded instantly to Guard Tower in Castle Age and Keep in Imperial Age. You don't want to discourage that for map control and Nomad. If it goes into the early towers wars, that could be a huge power spike for you, especially if you're up earlier than your opponent. Tower rushes are weaker on Definitive Edition than they used to be on Woodley and earlier versions of Age of Empires 2, though. Towers simply have less hit points and can be battered down easily by villagers, enemy villagers, or any melee unit if you don't wall them in with palisades or stone walls. But one bonus that comes into play for Koreans on Nomad, though, is that their villagers have extra line of sight. They have, what is it, +2 line of sight? Let me double check. +3 line of sight for Koreans. So that's very, very handy for Nomad for your early scouting. If you want to commit a villager or two to scouting, you could get a lot of intel on the Nomad maps. They also have a unique unit on Wander in the Turtle Ship that could be made from the docks for Castle Age onward. Very tanky unit to take out enemy a naval army or even docks. So that's something to consider as well. I think for those reasons, ease of scouting and good naval military, I think the Koreans are a solid B tier for Nomad, arguably close to the A tier, but they are lacking an eco bonus, so that's why I'm placing them step below. And then there's for the Lithuanians. That's a cool one. It's not one I have frequently picked for Nomad, but the fact that they start with +150 food is just huge for Nomad starts. It essentially means that Lithuanians on Nomad or any water or hybrid map, you could simply commit all of your villagers to wood right away, even though you aren't able to do much more than drop a dock and a house right away. You could commit all your villagers to wood at first and get to that fish economy early on still. They have the relics bonus for their knights and unique unit like this. So if you collect up until 4 relics, you get a max of +4 extra attack for your knights, which is so strong for your mobile units. They also have great thrush units in the skirmishers and pikemen moving faster. So for me, Lithuania is absolutely S tier for Nomad. Next up is the Magyars. For me, a tricky one. No direct eco bonus for Magyars on Nomad. I tend to not pick them, but they do get an early power spike upon reaching the next age with forging, or I mean rather the melee attack upgrade from the blacksmith kicking in instantly. You don't need to spend resources to research it. It simply kicks in. So that's going to prove handy if you go for your early scouts opening in the feudal age. And for your knights in the cast age and onwards as well. You'd argue that the unique unit, the Magyar Hussar, is something could be used for raiding purposes as well. And being a cav civ, I'd say that there are blacksmith upgrades for ranged units, which would also apply to galleys and these kinds of units on water. It's going to come in handy, but lacking that early eco bonus is a setback for me still. I'm actually going to put the Magyars in the C tier here. For next one, it's the Malay. Obviously a go-to naval civilization for the Malay. They have never-ending fish traps. So if you control water with Malay, something you should, you have a very, very nice food source on water that will simply never deplete. You spend that 100 wood on a fish trap, and it will never run out for you. So you have endless resources on water in terms of food if you are the Malay. Their advancing through the ages is also 66% faster, which is crucial on a Nomad early game to start contesting the water and the fish income of the other players. And you'd argue that they have some potential on land as well, with their battle elephants being 30% cheaper. So if you can get early to the cast age and you want to opt for some land aggression, it is possible with Malay. Their go-to is usually archers lying into arbalest instead, though, because their cavalry, they lack a lot of upgrades, especially in the defense department. But with all of the bonuses for water, Malay are certainly an S tier civ for Nomad. Next up is the Mulions. That's a definitive S tier for me. The Mulions, they save a lot of resources in terms of wood because their buildings cost 15% less wood. Their barracks units, like the pikemen and militia line units, they get +1 pierce armor per age, so that's kind of a hidden counter against enemy archers play as you move on through the game. You could even use longswords from Valiants to easily take out enemy buildings and even town centers, maybe even castles without murder holes because of that extra pierce armor, because you'll simply take a lot less damage from town center fire with your infantry units. But they're cheaper. Wood cost for building means that you can get a dock, a house, and a fishing ship and your town center up at the very start of the Nomad game. So you get a head start to the fish eco on water, giving you essentially one free villager instantly once your house and your dock is up, and gives you a head start over most generic civs on water. They also get gold mining for free in the feudal age, so that boosts the gold income a little bit, and kind of a hidden bonus towards naval version. You could actually commit one less villager to gold and still contest naval production of the enemy when you go into that early galley or fire galley fighting on water. Malians, top tier civ for Nomad for sure. Then next up is the Mayans. Bit tricky one for me, but they have an eco bonus after all. Their resources last 15% longer. Also, once your town center is up, you get one extra villager instantly. You start with slightly less resources, which could be a setback, but with the cheap archer, with the archers from your archer ranges, if you spawn somewhat close to your enemy, or with the unique unit, the plumed archers from the castle, you have some great mobility in addition to your eagle warriors for raiding potential. I'd still not see Mayans as completely top tier though, starting with slightly less resources and maybe not the top tier naval civ overall, but certainly high up there. It's an A tier civ for me. Next up is the Mongols. Mongols, they have a Dark Age bonus for their food income, and their hunt is gathered 40% quicker, 40% faster. So that's absolutely something you could make use of in the early game. If you put your TC close to somewhere there's some deer or some Boars, you're looking at some nice and early food income from Mongols, which again could free up a little bit more villagers of yours to go collect wood instead and make production from the docks a bit more easy. I'm not sure if Mongols deserve the top tier anymore. I think it's going to be an A tier still for me because it takes a long while to get to their fantastic unit, Mango Dai, to get to full upgrades in every village, something that would dominate against lots of civs. But you're very dependent upon finding that hunt early on to exploit that on Nomad, and that's not always the case because you want to kind of rush down your TC to get started. But overall, good civ. I'm gonna place them in the A tier here. Next up is the Persians. Obvious S tier for Nomad. I think it's actually the best Nomad civ of all, at least in my opinion. Simply because they start with plus 50 food, plus 50 wood. Means you could essentially drop your TC, dock, house, and make an efficient ship right away. And get a head start over most other civs except for Malians and maybe arguably Lithuanians as well. So, and then there's that once you get to the next stage with Persians, your town centers and docks start working 10% faster. In Castle Age, 15% faster. In Imperial Age, 20% faster. So a fantastic boom potential both for the fish boom on water and for the land economy with your town centers. Town centers and docks also with twice the hit points, so they're much tougher to take out for enemy units. And since your docks work faster from the feudal age onwards, you also get to produce your water aggression in terms of ships a lot more easily. It's just so many bonuses going for them for Persians early on, and solid S tier civ. Now for the Portuguese, they've received some buffs recently, but they've always been a strong naval civ anyway. They get to build a Feitoria in the Imperial Age, might not apply so much to Nomad because Nomad is overflowing with resources, but all of the units cost 20% less gold. That's going to come in handy when you want to get your army protection of any sort going. They have a beastly unique unit. If you can get to the organ gun masses, you're looking at a combination of units that is very tough for any civilization to counter actually, but it takes a lot of time to mass and is not necessarily viable, especially on 1v1 situations. But back to naval bonuses, ships from the Portuguese have 10% more hit points, easier to take naval engagements. Technologies overall are researched 30% faster, so you get a nice and easy power spike both for lands and naval units that way. They do have a unique text for ships as well, Karak, giving the ships extra armor, and Arquebus for gunpowder units to be more accurate, which could situationally come into play on land as well. But Portuguese lacking an early economy bonus, after all, is a B tier for me. Even with their beastly capabilities on water, it's a B tier because of the lack of an Dark Age eco bonus. Next up is the Saracens, which is a tricky one for me. No direct eco bonus at all, but once you get to the feudal age, you could build your market and you'd have an easier time manipulating your resources to whatever needs you might have. Their galleys attack 25% faster, so that comes into play on water, of course. That's going to give Saracens a boost for Nomad as well. Even the market, it costs 100 less wood as well, so you have an easier time getting your building up to advance to the next age. Something, though, that applies to Saracens is their archers with +1 attack versus buildings per age. So if you can get to the Saracens crossbows, you have a death ball against enemy buildings, and walls are less of an issue. Archers play isn't necessarily the go-to on Nomad, it's kind of situational, but if your enemy isn't too far off, I see this is a very valid play for the Saracens. Let's put them in a B tier as well, simply because of that lack of a Dark Age eco bonus, but still a solid civ with mobility in the knights and camels as well. They only get knights though and never get cavalier or higher in the Imperial Age. Next up is the Slavs. Tricky one for me as well. Their Slavs farms, they work faster. And if you can get to the Imperial Age, the infantry is great. If you can afford the Drashina technology, you have your infantry units dealing damage to adjacent units, which could be huge in combination with some kind of siege push. Strong siege tech 3 for Slavs. Their siege workshop units are 15% cheaper as well. So if you combine that with the faster working farms and that boom potential of Slavs, I'd say they're pretty high up there. I mean, you could actually afford to lose water as Slavs and still be in a good position because of your farms. And with your siege being cheaper, you're looking at a strong Castle Age push as well, maybe accompanied by some infantry or knights or whatever seems suitable against the opponent you're facing. A tier for me for their ability to adapt should they lose water early on. Next up, we have the Spanish. Civ frequently picked, at least for team games on Nomad, probably for 1v1s as well. Their builders work 30% faster, which is huge for getting that first TC up, town center up. That's going to come in handy. And their blacksmith techs don't cost gold, so that's an indirect eco bonus there, that you don't need to spend gold to get to your upgrades for your mounted units or skirmishers or whatnot. Their cannon galleons benefit from ballistics, so for the late game Spanish on Nomad could be huge. Not to mention that there's lots of stone on Nomad, or resources in general, so you have an easier time getting to your unique unit, the Conquistador, as well. Still, I'd argue that the Spanish are lacking a direct Dark Age bonus, but because their builders work faster and you could get that TC up a little bit faster and get going, and the locks as well, buildings in general, Spanish are arguably an A-tier civ, with their only missing opportunity being archers only, not getting crossbow. But that's not really a problem on Nomad necessarily. So Spanish A-tier for Nomad. Next up is the Tatars, which is an interesting one. After the recent buff, Tatars, they get 2 sheep spawning for free once you reach the feudal age. So that's, and considering that sheep provide an extra 50 food per sheep for Tatars, that's actually a huge food boost from the feudal age. And in the Castle Age as well, once you produce a new TC, you get to spawn 2 sheep instantly, 300 free food. So that's one of the Tatar's hidden bonuses for food income there. Their units deal 25% more damage when fighting from hills as well, and they get thumbering and party and tactics for free. So Tatars, great food eco, great boom potential after the recent buffs. Their cav archers are probably some of the best, at least in the Castle Age, in the game as well, and they have some unique technologies applying to their mounted units as well. Light cav, step lancers, and cavalry archers receive +1/+1 armor, and their timbered siege draft in the Imperial Age as well for trebuchets, given +2 range, could come into situational uses as well. I'd say that Tatars, they do get Bracer as well, being a cav archer civ. They have access to elite cannon galleon fast fire ships, good naval tech tree as well. I'd say Tatars are an A-tier civ for Nomad, maybe even S-tier, but I haven't actually played them enough myself on Nomad to justify that. Now let's move on to the Teutons. Teutons, slow civ, very nice for closed-off maps like Arena and such, because their boom is just amazing. Their farms cost 40% less. And I'd say that that's something that can come in very handy on Nomad, because you always risk losing water being a subpar naval civ as opposed to, for example, Italians or Portuguese or even Persians. So if you lose water, you'll have an easier time adapting your food economy on land to farms, because your farms cost almost half what of a generic farm does. Great farm boom potential for Teutons. Versatile tech tree in their infantry, or rather melee units, getting +1 melee armor in the Castle Age and another +1 in the Imperial Age. Strongest melee units in the game. And some, although lacking husbandry for the cavalry, which could be a setback, getting that extra melee puts them high up there. I wouldn't quite place them in the S tier, but since the cheaper farms could be considered applicable even in the Dark Age as well, and for adaptation, I'd say Teutons belong in the A tier for Nomad as well. Next up is the Turks. Now, Turks very dependent upon gold, something that is in abundance on Nomad, but Turks no Dark Age eco bonus at all. They have a little bit extra uh, pierce armor for their scout line units. That's a recent buff. They get +1 pierce armor from the feudal age, and which also they get light cav for free in the castle age and hussar for free in the imperial age. Frees up some opportunity for raids, but for Turks to really shine, you need to get to the castle and imperial ages. Maybe notably the imperial age, where gunpowder kicks in for free, and you could spam out hand cannoneers or bombard cannons just like that. And but I think Turks for Nomad lacking any significant Dark Age bonus for the economy and takes a bit of time to get rolling. That's D tier civ for me. I wouldn't pick Turks for Nomad. Next up is the Vietnamese, which is a peculiar one that could be a bit underrated for Nomad. They are an archer civ, so kind of an anti-archer civ, really. And because of that, of course, they get the last armor for archers and bracer, so they could contest water as the game goes on. They don't get fast fire ship, but other than that, they get very flexible tech tree for the docks. They don't get shipwright in the Imperial Age either, but they get careening and dry dock and things that could come in handy for Nomad. Maybe the most significant bonus for Nomad for Vietnamese, though, is that you get to know the location of your enemy town center. So once the enemy has constructed their town center, you will know their location, which could be huge on Nomad. You know if they're very close or if they're far away, if you need to go for some mobile approach, or if you could actually justify going archers early on and take the map control that way. So Turks, certainly, no, Turks, sorry, Vietnamese, I'm messing up here. One take, one chance here. Vietnamese, with some bonuses going for them, they don't have any applicable Dark Age bonuses though, but the economic upgrades doesn't cost any wood, could be useful from the feudal age onwards, and they also get conscription for free in the imperial age, which is useful for the late game for your producing units faster across the board. But again, lacking a Dark Age economy bonus, this is a B tier sim for me for Nomad with the Vietnamese. Even knowing the enemy location, it doesn't trump out the fact that you need a Dark Age bonus to justify a good Nomad start. Finally, last sim is the Vikings here. The Vikings, overall, strong civilization across any map. They have many naval bonuses working for them. Their docks are cheaper, means you have an easier time getting more docks up to mass units. A setback on water could be lacking fire galley, but once you get to the castle age, you have access to the longboat as Vikings, which is a very fast-firing, easily micromanaged ship produced from the docks. So that's something that could give you a power spike in the castle age onwards. Vikings also get wheelbarrow instantly in the feudal age, handcart instantly in the castle age, which is going to make the villagers all that more effective and faster working. A huge eco bonus once you can reach that next age. Now, for Nomad, since the docks are cheaper for Vikings, I'd consider that an indirect eco bonus, saving you some wood, getting the docks up, and overall, although lacking slightly in the mobility department for Vikings, in terms of, for example, the mountain units, the knights missing crucial upgrades, I'd still put Vikings in S tier for Nomad for their naval capabilities and general strength. So that's it for my Nomad tier list. Feel free to stop by my stream anytime, or the YouTube, where I also upload some of the games that have been casting on my stream. I hope to see you around, and let me know what you think of the tier list for Nomad here. Thank you and goodbye.